over the past, well, couple of years, and almost certainly this year, Northern Ireland has pretty much come to dominate, being essentially the central problem for Brexit. As we said from the very beginning, you could never ever have a hard border between the Republic and the north of Ireland. That would break the Good Friday Agreement, one of the most successful peace agreements in the world. And yet we would risk everything because, quote, sovereignty, freedom, and not wanting more immigration from Europe. Again, look at the figures. The immigration from Europe wasn't that bad compared to non-European immigration. Not only that, but European immigrants not only paid more in taxes, but took less from the state. You know, the evidence goes on and on. But surprisingly, in terms of potential flashpoints, we've talked so much about the situation in Northern Ireland, but shockingly, you might be asking, wait, don't we technically have another European border? Why, yes, we do. That would be, of course, Gibraltar. So why on earth has Northern Ireland become such a Brexit flashpoint, almost, if you will, but Gibraltar has not? And that is because the two situations have been handled completely differently. And more than shockingly, it has come down to a case of leadership and the fact that Britain has been far more willing to compromise on the Gibraltar border than it has been on the Northern Ireland border. So before we do jump into today's article on this, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people that do support the channel that way. And also remember, there are the YouTube memberships now open as well. So, on with today's article. And this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines. And the title is Gibraltar versus Northern Ireland, the Brexit flashpoints. With tensions continuing to mount between the UK and the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol, it is worth taking a look at how differently Brexit is playing out at another border between Britain and the EU, namely Gibraltar. Both were areas that were widely predicted to be Brexit flashpoints, but so far, only one has been. So why is that? The reason, I believe, has come down to the confidence and leadership more than actual history. There are similarities between and differences between Gibraltar and Northern Ireland, of course. Northern Ireland has a legacy of the Troubles, while Gibraltar is more singular in the views about being British. Both have sensitive borders with the EU, and right now, both require far more checks coming from Great Britain, while having more open borders to the EU. So there's enough to make comparison. And what's immediately apparent is that the difference in extent to which Gibraltar and Northern Ireland have accepted the reality of Brexit, because Gibraltar appears to be happy, whereas Northern Ireland isn't. So the question is, why? It's not that Gibraltar has become less British or more Spanish, although raising such a question feels like a key point about this. Gibraltar's leadership, well, more on them later, were able to separate the British identity from the post-Brexit trading relations. This didn't happen in Northern Ireland. The UK government negotiates on behalf of Gibraltar in the same way that it does for Northern Ireland. But as these negotiations have played out, it has felt as though the UK, rather than Northern Ireland, has set the objectives for Northern Ireland, where it's been Gibraltar setting them for Gibraltar. And they were also far more involved, particularly in the internal negotiation, as objectives and precedents with the external negotiations, and is far often more important. The Gibraltar government has always had the twin objectives of protecting the economy and the identity, and it saw those as separate, and then saw them in action in a very couple of ways during the negotiating time, when the UK rather effectively was saying, "We can't be British and be open to the EU," was the message. In comparison, The UK government never distinguished between the political and economic objectives with regard to Northern Ireland. It didn't accept that, as Gibraltar's government did, that Northern Ireland could be treated differently from Great Britain and yet still be British. And so, in so doing, the UK government found its objectives unclear, economically and identically tangled. Equally, parts of the political parties in Northern Ireland couldn't even reach a common position as could be seen in Gibraltar, or at least the position they reached one was so weak in relation to the UK government plans. The differing identities in Northern Ireland were far more of an obstacle, though they shouldn't have been insurmountable. The final point to be able to carry out the strategy in Fabian Picardo, I believe, Gibraltar had the outstanding negotiator on the whole UK side of Brexit, clear in its overall objectives, determining in using each meeting in pursuit of those objectives, friendly but tough, and a great communicator. Through observing both negotiations, I have learned that in Northern Ireland they needed to be a far more clear and far more agreed a cross-community objective. While some in Northern Ireland's political system understand that, this has not been enough. There was something that should have not been left to the distant government, that still needed for a far more cross-community objectives is to be still apparent. So on the Gibraltar model, you can be British while still having more checks of arriving from the UK compared to the EU. It is a confidence that has delivered leadership which simply hasn't seen enough anyone with regards to of the Northern Ireland. Finally, if the UK government had wanted to give itself a better chance in EU negotiations, it would have done everything to get Picardo to play a leading role. It is no accident that Gibraltar has not become a Brexit flashpoint. London should actually be learning from this. Learn from Gibraltar that the resolution of issues with regard to Northern Ireland is not about sausage regulations or the nationality of passport checks, but the extent to which identities and trade rules can be separated. Gibraltar and Northern Ireland may have different constitutional statuses, but it is a lesson in negotiation still to be had. And I completely agree, because this was one of what we were predicting back, in like the shall we say, the post referendum years, shall we say. This was what a lot of us were predicting would be a flashpoint, but it hasn't, because again, mainly the government in Gibraltar and its leadership had very clear objectives. It knew what it wanted to do. It went in there in an aggressive and yet friendly way, was part of the negotiations, and it got what it wanted. Whereas Northern Ireland, you had a whole completely political mess of the DUP not understanding or seemingly able to understand Brexit, the fact that most of Northern Ireland had pretty much voted to reject Brexit in the first place. Essentially, the DUP made this mess themselves by not being able to understand it. And then, twice, not only did it allow itself to be bribed by Theresa May, to which then it basically didn't agree to the soft terms that would have essentially not allowed this to happen. It then decided to side with the ERG, because the ERG again trade them and would later betray them on the Northern Ireland protocol issue that effectively puts a border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, thus now also upsetting the Unionists and the DUP, and they are still annoyed about this today. Like I say, two very not the same, situations, I'll agree, but if you look at the stance of negotiations, they were very, very similar on this. Just, it was a simple matter of the leadership in Gibraltar knew what it wanted, knew how to get it, whereas the leadership in, the Northern Ireland Assembly couldn't even agree on what its objectives were and what it wanted to do. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as one donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you for all those people who do support the channel. And of course, we'll see you all next time.